Will we have another heat wave? Will you see a celestial kiss? And will this be the most thundery World Cup on record? Lots to cover in this week's deep dive. Thank you for joining me. I'm Alex Burkill, presenter and meteorologist, coming to you from our headquarters here in Exeter. As always, make sure you're hitting that like button, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're sharing this video with anyone that you think might be interested in anything that I talk about today, and get your comments and questions coming in. I'll be answering some of them later on today, and also many of them will be going through in the Weather Studio Live. Annie and I will be here this Friday. Let's dive in then and look first of all at the weather that's happening across the UK currently. And you're probably aware there are a lot of showers around. It's a very showery setup that we have at the moment, and let's look at the latest satellite and radar. Let's just pause it here. Let's put the radar on, and wow, look at that rash of showers across the country. Loads of rumbles of thunder. There's been hail. It's just really showery at the moment, and there's more of that to come through the next few days. Let's go back to the pressure pattern, and what we can see, get rid of the jet stream, put the rain on, plenty more showers to come. Let's dart ahead to Wednesday. More showery weather on offer for many of us as well. As we always say with showers, they are hit and miss in nature. So there will be some times where you get an intense downpour and other times where you have glorious sunshine and you really just don't know what to wear, because at this time of year, even though temperatures aren't, well, they're only around average, it's still pretty warm in that sunshine, but you may still need a coat because there's always the risk of a bit of rain pushing through. More showers to come. Now, in terms of rainfall totals, they're probably not going to be too high. A relatively brisk flow, keeping the showers rattling through quite quickly, maybe 5-10 millimeters in an hour, that kind of thing for some places. But worth bearing in mind, a bit of a slower flow across northern areas. So here we could see some rainfall totals building up, maybe 20-25 millimeters in a few hours. Not really enough to cause any major problems, but nonetheless, intense downpours can't be ruled out with some of these showers pushing through. And then there's also a risk of lightning and hail and some gusty winds as those downpours push in. But let's look further ahead and what is going to happen. So plenty of showers through the rest of Tuesday, plenty of showers through the rest of Wednesday as well. And then we see a warm front initially coming in later Wednesday night into Thursday, and that's going to bring some rain. Rainfall totals don't look especially high, but nonetheless, some wet weather, and then all of that clearing through as we head towards the end of the week. Friday's a bit of a messy, perhaps a transition day, if you will, with the rain clearing through. And then notice high pressure building in time for the weekend. Lots of people are hoping for some fine weather, lots of events happening this weekend, and we could do with some decent dry weather for many of those. And it does look like many of us are going to have a lot of dry weather this week, this weekend, sorry, not this week. Lots of showers and some rain this week, but this weekend things could or are expected to settle down. Let's just go back, because we're going to see high pressure developing. However, there is some uncertainty as to exactly where this high is going to be. Notice we have low pressure out towards the west of us and then this ridging ahead of it. But exactly how close this low gets in and how amplified this ridge is, how the influence of any low over Scandinavia, well, that's still all to be determined. Now, what I'm quite confident about is the high pressure developing and the weather turning more settled for many of us. Bit of rain towards the north, but that only looks pretty light, really. So it does look like this weekend is going to be mostly fine, especially compared to the unsettled, at times thundery week that many of us have had so far. And the high pressure looks like it will be mostly dominant through the whole of the weekend, probably even into the beginning of next week as well. But the question is exactly how far this is going to push its way across. Let's just go back to, actually, let's look at Sunday. And if I put the 850 temperature layer on, and you can see there's fresher air from the north that's edging its way in, and then you've got warmer air coming from the south, and exactly where this boundary is going to be, well, there has been some significant model discrepancies. Previous models wanted to bring that warmer air further in and push it across more of the UK, whereas now the models look a little cooler than they did 24 hours, 48 hours ago. I can show you that in a different way. So here we're looking at maximum temperatures forecast for this coming Sunday. On the left-hand side, I have our most recent model run, well, from 3Z this morning, so the 4 a.m. model output. And then on the right-hand side, I have the 4 p.m. model output from yesterday. And you can see the stark difference. Yesterday, the model was going with high 20s, low 30s across many parts, particularly towards the east. That's because it had that warmth, that warm air that I mentioned coming in all the way across the UK. Now, the most recent model runs aren't as warm as that. They're going with the idea that, yes, it is going to be settled and warm with any sunshine, but temperatures are only really peaking. Well, this is suggesting low to mid 20s, but I still think mid to possibly high 20s quite likely. Now, another way that I can show the large spread, now this is the plume, again looking at the 850 temperature layer, but for looking above Lincoln. And what you can really see, let's look at Saturday. Just look how large that spread is in what the model is expecting. This is from ECMWF. And you can see through the next few days, the model spread is pretty slim, as you would expect. But for this sort of lead time, we don't normally see the spread as large as this. And it can be anything from significantly warmer than average to a little bit fresher than average. And it's all because of that difference, that uncertainty with how much that warm air is going to come in from the southwest. Another way that I can show you that, actually clicked the wrong button, but if I get up our ECMWF output, and if we look at some of the different members, let's go ahead to this coming Sunday. I've gone too far. Let's go to Sunday, 3 o'clock. If we look at member 0, for example, and this seems like a good, reasonable middle ground, I guess. Places towards the northeast, a little bit fresh, perhaps. Low teens, that kind of thing, towards the south-southwest. High teens, low 20s looks quite likely. But if we look at run 2, for example, and this is a fair bit hotter. It's going with temperatures in the high 20s. So this has the warmer air making its way more across the UK. If we look instead at maybe model 20, which one was it? 20, I think. Yeah, this only just about has high teens, just about scraping into the low 20s, so a fair bit fresher. So whilst there's high confidence in the weather turning more settled for this weekend, and it will probably last a little while, it's a bit uncertain as to exactly how warm it's going to be. I think towards the southwest we have a greater chance of seeing that warm air coming through, so here temperatures likely to be above average. But the further north and east you are, the less confident I am about that warmer air coming in. What happens thereafter? Again, some question marks as to how quickly this low pressure system out towards the west of us starts to make its way across. But I think it's a reasonable chance that the fine weather will last at least until Monday, and then we'll see a transition during the middle part of next week. And so it's not out of the question that Monday's perhaps even warmer than on Sunday for some of us. So that's something to be aware of. Now, obviously, we will have more information about this in this week's 10-day trend, which will be available on Wednesday. They'll be looking in more detail as to exactly how things are going to change and transition, and the likelihood, hopefully, we'll have a slightly higher confidence in what we can expect in terms of the warm weather that's coming our way. Whilst a few things to note about the warm weather, there have been some mentions in some forms of media, some papers, some news articles, etc., relating any warm or potentially hot spell that we have coming our way and relating it to the El Nino, super El Nino event that is being predicted. Now, I've talked about this before in deep dives and Weather Studio Lives. Two things. So El Nino hasn't officially been declared yet. It could be declared this week, depending on who you go to. The sea surface temperature threshold that BOM used, so 0.8, has actually been exceeded, 0.81, but they also look at some other atmospheric conditions, and so still yet to be declared officially. And nonetheless, I mean, I have our chart here looking at those sea surface temperature anomalies, and this is our May projection from May, and you can see the spread. It looks like it's going to be super high, getting to around 2 by September. But yeah, at the moment, we're not quite there yet, but very, very, very close for it being an El Nino year. But nonetheless, so it's very likely it is going to be, but there is always a significant lag. And actually, for Northern Europe, for the UK, the impact of El Nino on our summers is not particularly strong. It's much more of a winter thing, and so it's not really something that we need to be linking this warm, potentially hot spell that we have coming up to the El Nino. Same way we didn't link the heat wave that we had in May to it, because it hadn't developed. In the same way, when I talked about the summer forecast last year, whilst the models have some bias, which we had to correct for in an El Nino year, it's the summer forecast isn't that heavily, in fact, it's not really heavily impacted at all by the fact that it is an El Nino year. One other thing that I wanted to talk about, when it comes to a warm, hot spell, it's very tempting for people to make the most of water, either that's inland or coastal water. But I wanted to highlight that even though the air temperature is going to get increasingly high as we head towards the weekend, like I said, low to mid 20s, perhaps high 20s, that kind of thing, the sea surface temperature, the temperature of the water, stays quite low. It takes a lot longer for the water to heat up than it does for the air, for the land, and as a result you can get cold water shock if you go from hot conditions into something markedly colder. Behind me here I have our sea surface temperatures around the UK at the moment. They're ranging from around 12 Celsius towards the north of the UK to around 14 Celsius towards the southwest and around 16 Celsius towards the southeast. So they are higher than a few weeks ago, as you would expect, when temperatures around some parts of the UK were still in single figures. But that's still a marked drop compared to the air temperature that we're forecasting for some this weekend. And so we do have advice on how to make sure that you're able to enjoy both inland and coastal waters safely. So the big thing to help avoid cold water shock is checking the temperature of the water before you jump in. Suddenly jumping in when you're really hot can cause major problems. It can put your body into shock and then can cause major issues. If you're going to be in the water for a long period of time, bearing in mind that the temperature of the water is still pretty low, then do try and wear a wetsuit to protect yourself from the cold water. Don't swim alone, stay together, stay in a group. And if in an emergency, then you need to call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard if you're at the coast. Unfortunately, during the previous heat wave that we had in May, there were several fatalities from people swimming in waters. And that's the type of thing that we want to avoid entirely. And this is why, with our partners, we give out this advice to help make people able to enjoy the warm, the hot weather, and also our coasts and our inland waters as safely as possible. Right, so let's move on. There's, hold on, I've digressed. There was a chart. Here we go. There are a couple of tropical storms currently affecting parts of North America or Central America. We've got Tropical Storm Boris, Tropical Storm Christina, and they're causing some problems around the Pacific. And I just wanted to have a little look at them. Now, I think Boris isn't going to cause too many issues. It's likely to fizzle out through the next few days. Let's get rid of the jet stream. I don't know why I put the 850 on, but if I just run this through, and remember we've got Boris and Christina. Why is that not playing? So Boris here, Christina. Boris is, it's a tropical storm, but it's going to make landfall and then kind of fizzle out. Meanwhile, Christina's going to push its way across and make landfall several times, and it's going to bring a fair amount of rain and some strong winds as well. Could be quite impactful for this part of the world. So it's going to bring some pretty unsettled weather. But whilst we're this side of the Atlantic, there's another thing that I wanted to talk about, and it's what's going to be happening in North America through the next few weeks. You're probably aware that we have the World Cup coming up, and it's likely to be a very thundery World Cup. There have been recent sporting events which have had to be postponed because of lightning strikes in North America. For example, there was the Club World Cup last year, which had several games delayed because of the thunder and lightning that was kicking off. There was a warm-up game earlier on, just a few days ago, that had to get postponed by 2 hours. I want to say it was Saudi Arabia. I can't remember who. I looked this up, but I've forgotten. There was a game, I think it was Saudi Arabia, against someone playing a warm-up friendly, and that had to get postponed by 2 hours. And so I wanted to have a look at the likelihood of this happening in what is a very thundery country at a very thundery time of year. So this map that I have behind me here, produced by the NOAA and the National Weather Service, looks at the frequency of thunderstorms or lightning across the US during June. And you can see towards Florida, that's where we're seeing it most likely. But it's not just in Florida, it's across many parts. I mean, towards the northwest, towards Alaska, it's less likely. But yes, towards the southeast of the country, particularly Florida, that's where we see the highest amounts. And if we look at July, it's even greater. So still substantial amounts of lightning strikes in parts of the southeast, but across western areas, we're going to see some significant thunderstorms as well. This is based on average. And so a few things to unpack here. So in the US, they have a rule when it comes to lightning. If it's observed within 8 miles of the stadium, then they need to stop, postpone the game for 30 minutes, and that's 30 minutes from when the lightning was observed. And then if another strike of lightning happens within 8 miles of the stadium, it gets postponed for another 30 minutes. So you start that 30 minutes again, which is why you can get these 2-hour delays because of the impact from lightning. Now, lightning is dangerous. It can cause fatalities, it can cause major problems. Interestingly, there are some stadiums which have roofs, and it being indoors is perhaps the safest place to be, but it's not just the outdoor stadiums and events that are at risk of being impacted by the potential for these lightning storms, these thunderstorms. Because you've got to bear in mind people need to travel to and from the event, and so that could cause problems as well. England's first game, for example, is in an indoor stadium, but it's not out of the question that thunderstorms could cause problems. A study, an attribution study, looked at a 10-year period from 2016 to 2025, looked at all 16 stadiums used for this World Cup, and found that all of them are at risk, or in that 10-year period, all of them had seen thunderstorms or lightning within 30 miles of the stadium during the period that the World Cup is going on, so as in middle to late June and into early July. And so nowhere's really safe from the thunderstorm risk, and so there's a reasonably high chance that we're going to see some games being delayed. In fact, some people are saying it's not really a chance that we're going to see, it's almost a guarantee that there will be some postponements. Now, some of the games are happening earlier on in the day, in which case they have the opportunity to delay it and wait, but some of the ones which are later kickoffs, they may have to be postponed until the next day, which may not be an issue during the early group stages, but later stages of the group stages and the knockout competition part, well, that could cause more problems as well. So something to take into account. And it's not just the thunder, which could be a big talking point weather-wise for this World Cup. It's also the heat and the warmth and the humidity. Now, cast your mind back to the 1994 World Cup, or the last time it was held in America, and you may remember extreme heat temperatures in excess of 40 Celsius. Now, back then, the players were actually banned or not allowed to take significant water breaks. They've moved on from that, and they've changed the rules entirely. I think they're implementing a rule where every game, halfway through each half, there will be a water break for the players to hydrate and get some respite from the heat. And that's worthwhile because temperatures are likely to be even higher at times through this World Cup than they were 12 years ago because of our warming climate. Worth highlighting, both in terms of thunderstorms and the heat, there's a large spread across Canada, America, and Mexico with the location of the stadiums. So there's a large spread as to the standard weather that those venues can expect. But nonetheless, we do have these significant impacts and the risk of them with the hot weather and the thundery weather. When it comes to the heat, they'll be looking at the wet bulb globe temperature, which they use as a way of measuring how easy it is for your body to lose that heat. The higher the air temperature and the higher the humidity raises that wet bulb globe temperature, because, you know, 38 degrees but really dry, you're able to lose your heat by sweating that bit more easily. But if it's really humid, then your sweating is just not going to cut the mustard in the same way. And so it takes both of those things into account when coming up with it. Now, if you get if you're looking at above 26 degrees for that wet bulb globe temperature, then that's when it becomes really uncomfortable. 28 above, and it's borderline unsafe for people to be taking part in strenuous activity, that kind of thing. So they're the figures that people are looking at. And interestingly, around 26 of the 104 26 of the 104 games that are taking place in this World Cup are at venues which are at risk of seeing that 26 threshold being reached or exceeded. Now, 17 of those games are in venues which have like air conditioning and equipment to cool things down, both for the players and the spectators. But that still leaves 9 games in venues that aren't in 9 games that are in venues that aren't set up for that kind of way. So the heat stress on both the players and the spectators could be significant. So it's not just the heat, but it's also the thunder that we need to watch out for in this coming World Cup. So definitely a big talking point. Either way, come on England, we're hoping that you bring it home. Then one last thing that I wanted to talk about before I go is the chance of seeing a celestial kiss. Yes, Venus and Jupiter are going to be the closest in the sky that they're going to be for a long, long time this coming night. So Tuesday night, we're likely to see them very close indeed. How close? Well, if you get your hand or you get your arm and stretch it out, they're going to be about as close as the width of your little finger when you hold it at arm's length. So really, when you look at them in the sky, so really close indeed. Now, Jupiter's been in the sky for a little while, but it's heading closer and closer towards the sun's glare, so it's going to disappear through the next few days. Meanwhile, Venus is still going to be, in fact, it's getting more and more, we're staying above the horizon for longer and longer after the sunset, but we're at that pinch point, that perfect point where they're getting in closer. Now, you may have seen through recent nights, Venus has been traveling kind of this direction, closer towards Jupiter. But yes, through this coming night, Tuesday night, that's when they're going to be at their closest conjunction. A celestial kiss, if you will. Some people calling them like literal, well, are they literal? Well, ships in the celestial night, I guess, or celestial ships in the night, because they will just be crossing past, but it's relatively fleeting. In fact, the next time that we're going to see them similarly close will be at the back end of 2028, so a little while to wait. So do head out. If you want to try and see them, the best chance to do so is around an hour or so after sunset. Look towards the west-northwest in the sky, and you'll be able to tell the difference between stars and planets, because planets are these bright lights. They'll look brighter than the stars anyway, so they should stand out, but the stars will be twinkling, whereas the planets won't be. And also bearing in mind that the sun sets in the west, that do take care, don't look out, particularly with binoculars or telescope. You don't even need them, to be honest, to see Jupiter or Venus tonight. But don't look out before the sun has set and risk damaging your eyes by looking directly at the sun. So give it a little while after sunset, but not too long, and try and look towards the west-northwest, and you should be able to see Venus and Jupiter. You may even get a chance of seeing Mercury, but that's going to be more towards the horizon and a little bit harder to see, and you may need to, well, you don't want to risk looking directly at the sun. In terms of the chances of us seeing it with regards to our weather, let's just have a look at what we're expecting. Ooh, not sure what's going on with my graphics around the edge there, but not to worry. Let's look at the weather around sunset tonight. So sunset's around 10, depending on where you are in the UK. So roughly looking in the right place. And across Northern Ireland and parts of the Republic of Ireland, a lot of cloud here. Elsewhere, there are bits of cloud. Fair few showers to watch out for, but quite a bit of clear sky as well. So most of us have a reasonable chance. Just be prepared that you may need to take a coat and wait for a shower to pass through. Obviously, with the view towards the west-northwest, if you head somewhere where your view of the horizon isn't blocked looking out towards the west-northwest, you have a greater chance or better view of seeing Jupiter and Venus. If you do spot them, do take a photo, send it in. We have an email address, weatherpics@metoffice.gov.uk, and maybe we'll share some of them in our Weather Studio Live on Friday. But Thank you very much for watching this week's Deep Dive. I hope you found it interesting as always. And like I said at the start, we'll do get your questions and comments coming in. We'll be answering some of them in the Weather Studio Live on Friday, and I'll be answering some of them now. If you've enjoyed this, hit the like button. If you've not enjoyed it, why not hit the like button anyway? And make sure you share this with anyone that you think might be interested in it. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.